Good evening. Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you for the opportunity that's before us tonight. And I'm thinking of the verse in Ephesians 5 that says to make the most of every opportunity. And I know that's what every individual, both represented here and our leadership for the community, our mayor, our city council members, those in leadership, as well as those who are here from the community that represent our fire, our police, and citizens. We're here to make this community better. We're here because you have given us this opportunity. Lord, I pray with everything that takes place here tonight, it would be for the betterment of our citizens. And we're reminded as well to lift up those that may be struggling tonight and having difficulty, whether it's with sickness and health, COVID, or other issues. Our heart goes out to them and we lift them before you. We pray that they would have a speedy recovery. God, I pray over our first responders, our fire, and our personnel that represent our police department. And we're reminded just in the last couple weeks just how they lay their lives on the line every day for this city. And Lord, we pray that as they watch over us, God, that you would watch over them. And we thank you for all that will take place here tonight. And we pray that in your name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. City Clerk's report on posting the agenda and roll call.
Tonight's meeting agenda was posted on Wednesday, September 29th at 4:14 p.m. Councilmember Armendariz?
Present.
Councilmember Braca?
Here.
Councilmember Hilton?
Here.
Councilmember Laura Munoz?
Present.
Councilmember Marks?
Here.
Councilmember Tovar?
Here.
And Mayor Blinkley.
Here. Okay, under orders of the day, regarding item 10C on tonight's agenda, acceptance and display of the 150th anniversary time capsule, this item is no longer applicable, as the council was notified last week that the gift has been rescinded and the time capsule has been removed. So I just want to point out that 10C no longer applies. All right, employee introductions. We have fire and police. Whoever wants to go first.
Madam Mayor, council, members of the public, my privilege to introduce our newest police officer, Matthew Avila. And he's traded in his khakis and greens for blues. He comes to us from the San Benito Sheriff's Department. Matt grew up here in Gilroy and attended Live Oak High School. And from there, he went on to Gab and ultimately obtained his bachelor's degree from San Jose State in behavioral science. He started with the San Benito County Sheriff's Department as a correctional deputy in 2016, and also was an extra help probation counselor for the probation department here in Santa Clara County. Eventually in 2018, he became a deputy, and he was there up until we took him in October 1st, last Friday. And so we're very fortunate to be still attracting quality lateral police officers. He has 3 beautiful children and lives locally in Hollister with his wife. And when he's not working, he enjoys lifting weights, watching football, and spending time with his family. Please join me in welcoming Matthew Avila.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. It's pretty cool to be able to serve in a city I grew up in. I know the chief said I went to school in Morgan Hill, which is true, but my parents did live here in Gilroy. I just went to school in Morgan Hill, sorry. And just thank you, everybody. I'm excited.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council and Madam Mayor. I'd like to, it's my privilege to introduce 3 of our newest generation of firefighters. They just finished their fire academy. Thank you. They just finished their fire academy, and they're now just wrapping up their evaluations as firefighter paramedics, and they'll soon be released to independent duty, where you'll see them out on the streets working with all the fire crews. First one I'd like to introduce is firefighter paramedic Lamar Turner. Lamar was born in Alameda County, and he and his older brother were raised by his parents. Lamar's parents taught him 3 important values that made him the man he is today. Those values include hard work,
always accountable, and always dedicated. Lamar has been married to his wife, Amy, for 9 years and has 3 beautiful daughters, Aubriana, Kayla, and Brooklyn. He and his family enjoy outdoor activities such as camping, playing basketball, and bike riding. He also graduated from Bethany College with a degree in business administration and minor in organizational management. After college, he was introduced to the fire service, became an EMT and a paid call firefighter for Scotts Valley. He later became a paramedic for Alameda County. In 2012, he and his wife moved to Gilroy and to raise their family. Since moving here, they have never looked back. Gilroy is a wonderful place to live, and they feel it is one of the best decisions they have made. Now Lamar feels he's in the best place of his life, being able to raise his family and work in the community where he lives and feels like the dream come true. He's looking forward to growing with the city of Gilroy and protecting the people of the community.
Good evening. I just have a few words. I would like to thank the Gilroy and the City Council for providing me with this wonderful opportunity to work here. I feel blessed to be able to work and raise my family in the city that I live in. Lastly, I would like to thank my family, my wife, my kids, on this journey to become a Gilroy firefighter. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Chief Wyatt and Chief Wong.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce firefighter paramedic Josh Daly. Josh is 27 years old and currently lives in Livermore, California. Prior to being given the opportunity to work for the Gilroy Fire Department, he worked as an emergency medical technician in San Joaquin County. While working as an EMT, Josh attended paramedic school and obtained his paramedic license. Most recently, Josh worked as a paramedic in San Joaquin County and then Alameda County. In his free time, he enjoys hiking, playing ice hockey, and riding motocross. Josh is very grateful to come from a close-knit family and is extremely thankful for all their support. Josh is very grateful for his girlfriend of almost 7 years, Kaylee. Josh is extremely excited about his career here with the Gilroy Fire Department, and he can't wait to begin serving the community and the citizens that live and work in the city of Gilroy.
Good evening, everybody. Madam Mayor, Your Honorable Council. Just a few words to say. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to work here in this city. I'm very excited to continue to grow as a paramedic and expand my skill set for the community and for the citizens that live here, as well as taking on the role of the fire side as well. Like Lamar said, I wouldn't be here without the support of my family, my mom, my dad, my twin sister McKenna, and then also my girlfriend. So I'm very thankful for them. I'm also thankful for Chief Wyatt, Chief Wong, the whole Gilroy Fire Department for giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to seeing where this takes me and, continuing to grow and learn as a person and help out the community as best I can.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I'd like to introduce firefighter paramedic Jeremy Dance. Jeremy was born in Mountain View, California. He spent most of his life living in Saratoga and San Jose near the borders of Saratoga and Campbell. He attended Limbrick High, where he enjoyed football, wrestling, spending time with his friends, and academics. After high school, he entered the associate's program at the Fire Tech at Mission College, sparking his journey into the world of firefighting and EMS. Jeremy's family has always been a large part of his life. His family consists of his mother, father, stepmother, brother, and sister. They are all a bit spread out geographically, spanning from Redwood City, Reno, Seattle, and he resides in Oakland. However, they don't let this get in the way from staying close and seeing each other as much as possible. Jeremy currently lives with his significant other, Callie, and their 2 cats in Oakland, California. They enjoy spending time with friends, traveling, hiking, camping, and winter sports. He personally enjoys playing football, golf, exercising, cooking, and barbecuing with his smoker. Jeremy looks forward to being able to provide the best service he can to the city of Gilroy. His favorite part about being a firefighter paramedic is being able to help people whether it be at an emergency or just someone who is there they can talk to.
Alrighty. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Your Honorable Council. Just like to let you all know I'm very excited to be here. Very excited. Looking forward to a long, prosperous career with myself and my two fellow firefighter paramedics. I'd like to thank you for having us here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity for us to serve the great city of Gilroy and grow and do good things. I'd also like to thank my family, my significant other, Callie. Wouldn't be here without them and their support. Thank you for Chief Wong for leading us up the way to where we are now, and for Chief Wyatt and the Gilroy Fire Department. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Moving on to Planning Commission annual presentation. Tom Fisher, who is chair of the commission, will be speaking to us here.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Tom Fisher. I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission. I'm here tonight to report on the activities of the Planning Commission from October 3rd, 2019 through September 16th, 2021. Like the Council, the Planning Commission consists of 7 members. They are Vice Chair John Doyle, Joan Lewis, Adeline Jezebel Marino, Andrew Ridley, Manny Bendel, me, and our newest member, who we have not yet met, Ellie Stephanie. The Planning Commission acts as an advisory body to the City Council in the review of planning applications for land use entitlements, including subdivisions, plan unit developments, zone changes, conditional use permits, and variances from the city's development standards, comprehensive planning studies, and zoning code. The Commission is a quasi-judicial body that has the authority to approve, reject, or rescind variances and conditional use permits, all subject to council appeal. Also, like the Council, Planning Commissioners have committee assignments and attend and participate in those committee meetings. Those committees and assignments are as follows. South County Joint Planning Advisory Committee, Commissioner Manny Bendel. Historical Heritage Committee, Commissioner Adeline Jezebel Marino. Street Naming Committee, Commissioner Joan Lewis. Downtown Business Association, Commissioner Andrew Ridley. Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, Vice Chair John Doyle. Because of COVID, commissioners had very few educational opportunities during this time. We did receive a presentation from Cal Poly students regarding energizing the downtown core. We reviewed the budget request process. We received updates on changing housing development laws from the Assistant City Attorney. Regardless of the COVID restrictions, the Planning Commission has had an active 2 years with a total of 18 meetings. Over the past 2 years, we have held public hearings and forwarded recommendations to the Council for a USA amendment near Wren and Vickery, an exception to rental rates for Glen Loma below market rate apartments, a 4-lot subdivision on Farrell Avenue, subdivision of 4.42 acres into 2 lots for O'Reilly Auto Parts on 10th and Alexander, an expansion of a self-storage facility on Murray Avenue, subdivision of 8.95 acres into 3 commercial lots on Automar Parkway, a planned unit development for the cottages at Kern, and the commercial development for Laurel Square at 10th and Chestnut. We also held public hearings and forwarded recommendations to Council for citywide issues, including, among others, the draft general plan policy text, amendments to ADU standards, amendments to the sports park master plan, the historic resource inventory update, capital improvement program, adoption of the 2040 general plan, a zoning amendment to allow electrified fencing in commercial and industrial zones, and mixed-use residential and multifamily residential design standards. We held public hearings and approved 3 conditional use permits. One for the Bitter Tap House on Monterey and 2nd Street, one for the self-storage facility on Murray Avenue, and one for the farmers market at the outlets. We also approved architectural and site requests from Vines and Pints downtown on Monterey and an industrial building on Forest Street. We also granted an appeal to rescind a minor modification permit for landscaping at Eagle Ridge. We are looking forward to seeing what the next year has in store. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tom. Council, anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much.
No, you're in the clear. Thank you. And thank you to all the commissioners.
Hard work.
Okay, moving on to public comment by members of the public on items not on the agenda. This is the time if anyone wants to speak. If you would please fill out a card if you have anything to say on items not on the agenda but within our jurisdiction. Do we have any?
No public comment card.
Okay, great. Council member reports. Councilmember Bracco.
I just wanted to mention that, like most of us up here, I was invited to the new Tempo restaurant last night, and it's very beautiful inside, and the food is amazing, so everybody should go visit it and help support our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to state that starting September 15th through October 16th is Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's a time for us to recognize the deep roots, substantial, and continued contributions to our beautiful community by our Hispanic residents. It's also October 1st starts Filipino Heritage Month, so those two overlap. I attended the Historic Heritage Committee, who continues to work on the Historic Ordinance Work Plan, and discussion on how the Mills Act can help homeowners who qualify with restoration and repair, also business owners who qualify depending on their buildings, whether they're designated historic. Let's see, and we discussed how to get more information to homeowners about the Mills Act when they buy or they're selling their home. The Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency, we met and received information on programs implemented to protect the western burrowing owl, who unfortunately has declining numbers all across our county, and how to expedite the enrollment of land in lieu property so that we can encourage in lieu property that is in our system to be input into our reserve system, which helps make things more efficient. And then the current revenue of the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency is at $29 million. That's all.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to extend the invitation to everyone listening to go out and visit Gilroy Gardens this month. They're celebrating their annual Halloween festivities, which they've added a lot to it this year, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And also, I have to echo Councilmember Bracco's sentiments about Tempo. It was wonderful last night, and we have a really nice anchor for downtown, so please go visit it. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. For the South County United for Health, the County Behavioral Health Services staff shared a brochure to address fentanyl use. Use has increased significantly in the county since the start of the pandemic. GUSD teachers are being trained to administer Narcan. The impact of the health worker promotore model in Gilroy is to engage residents to get COVID testing and vaccines was shared. This model has been very successful and efforts are underway to continue to use this community engagement model. The model includes residents going door to door to share information with other residents and even providing COVID testing with training from public health staff. This Friday, October 8th, is National Coming Out Day, and there will be a resource fair and flag raising at Rebecca Children's Services in East Gilroy from 4:30 to 6:30. The event welcomes the LGBTQ+ community as well as friends, families, and allies. Lastly, happy Walk to School Day, which is this October 6th. I'd like to welcome all the youth back to school, and we're encouraging the school community to leave their car at home and choose to walk, bike, or roll to school. This helps teach our children safe walking and biking skills, reduces traffic and air pollution near and around schools, and helps children get more physical activity. If you need suggested walk and bike routes, then ask your school for their official map that was created by the Safe Process School Task Force and funded by Public Health. And also don't forget that October 6th is California Clean Air Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. Recently, Mayor Blankley and I attended the League of Cities Conference in Sacramento. I know that we both attended many of the workshops. Some of them that I attended, I'll just list some of them. An out-of-the-box technique for decision-making and resident involvement, which is huge. How to create a more inclusive environment for our city. Policy and legal considerations in serving the unsheltered. Building an effective city council and management team. Tools for navigating through elected officials who don't follow rules. And cannabis, perception versus reality. After all the workshops, the Cal City's General Assembly approved bylaw amendments and acted on 2 resolutions during the annual business meeting. The first vote in the meeting was the proposed bylaw amendments to enhance Cal City's governance and make technical changes. One of the amendments that was made was to recognize that Cal City diversity caucuses in the League of City to reflect a more diverse governing board. And that was something that passed by a large vote. And there was other various minor technical considerations that were also passed for amendments. Following the bylaw amendments, the General Assembly considered 2 resolutions that established Cal City's policy. Resolution number 1 addressed the online sales tax equity, which was submitted by the city of Rancho Cucamonga. That passed, and it would go back to the governing board. Resolution 2 that also passed is securing railroad property maintenance, and that was submitted by Southgate. So those 2 passed and will go back to the general committee. Cal Cities are working on the next steps and will keep us posted. We also, at the conference, had an opportunity to meet with our Morgan Hill City Council friends, and we also attended many networking events. As mentioned earlier, Temple Kitchen and Bar is opening up Tuesday at 3 o'clock, so make sure you stop by. Recently, Councilmember Laurel Munoz and I hosted a downtown business town hall meeting, and we had many folks, business owners, community members that attended. Our next step, we're scheduled to meet with our city manager to discuss the outcomes of our meeting. I want to thank all that showed up, shared their thoughts, their concerns, their ideas, and we look forward to our next steps in improving and making sure that our downtown is a destination for all of Gilroy. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Laurel Munoz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 quick updates. One is with regard to my role on the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority. Again, this is the regional body that I'm a part of with other members, elected members throughout the county that work on this body for shared communications networks for our emergency service providers and our law enforcement providers. We had a meeting last week, I believe it was, and there was a news report. People might have seen this a couple of weeks ago, but there was actually someone who was in possession of an electronic jamming device that was interfering with that communications network. That was actually up the road in Morgan Hill. It was disrupting the public safety communications network. Thankfully, the device was located and disabled by police, and communications are now back to normal, I'm happy to report. So great job to our law enforcement throughout the region. The second update is that tomorrow is the National Night Out. For those who haven't attended, this is a great community event that brings together law enforcement, members of our community. It's just a fun time for people to get together. There are fun activities for children, fun giveaways, things like that. I believe our police chief last time was judging a dance-off contest. I mean, it's really a good time, seriously. So that'll be tomorrow. I think it starts around 5:30 on 6th Street, so please do come on out.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, thank you for announcing National Night Out. That is tomorrow night. And Vice Mayor Tovar, thank you for the summary of the League of Cities that we attended. Things I'd like to add to this, to my report. Cities Association of Santa Clara County is in the process of addressing the racial justice policies. This is kind of continuing from last year, and it's a way to compare for all of the cities in Santa Clara County to kind of check in with each other so that we can all benefit from each other. So that's happening right now. I wanted to point out that a new bus is going to be starting on October 11th, public transportation. That would be the 568. It's called the Rapid 568. It replaces the Express 168. So whether you think one is better than the other is going to be up to the user. But the 568 comes every 30 minutes, even though it makes more frequent stops, but not as many as the 68 does. So that's starting October 11th, and the ribbon cutting will be at 10 a.m. on the 14th out at the Transit Center for anyone who wants to join that. And I'm not going to talk about the TOD because we have that on our agenda. So the transit-oriented development will be coming up later. All right, that's my report. We move on to future agenda items. Is there anything that we need to? Okay. Consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they wish to remove from consent?
Nothing to move, but I would simply ask that we move approval of that.
All right. Is there a second?
that.
All right. Moved by Councilmember LaRomagnosa, seconded by Councilmember Tovar. Are we using the screen? No.
We need a roll call vote.
Okay.
Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Leroy Munoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar? And Mayor Blinkley.
Yes. All right. That passed unanimously. Well, I can't remember what we used the screens for before. Everything's a roll call. Public hearings. Yeah.
For ordinances and resolutions, we have to do roll calls. And then I think in the virtual days, we got used to doing them for everything,
Yeah.
although they're not technically always required.
Right. I'll get it. All right. Item 8A, public hearings. This is a public hearing for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the 2020 Water Shortage Contingency Plan. This is going to be a doozy, everybody, and it's really important. So, Gary, take it away.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Gary Heap with the Public Works Department. I have with me this evening Tony Akell from Akell Engineering, who has put these documents together for us. He's well-versed in this material. He's been to the council a number of times presenting these types of documents. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with Tony. He does great work here. This document this evening, or these documents that are being presented, are an introduction. There's a two-step process, an introduction, opening of the public hearing this evening, and then we'll be taking comments from the council and the public starting this evening through when the documents are adopted at the next meeting on the 18th, I believe, which will then close the public hearing at that time. So with that, let me introduce Tony Akell, and he can start the presentation.
Right, thanks, Gary. Madam Mayor, council members, my pleasure to be here again addressing this council. I must admit that this is my first outing since the pandemic shut down.
Wow.
This is my first presentation in person, and I feel like I can go for the next hour and a half. But Gary said keep it brief, and this mask is going to remind me to keep it brief. We are here today to talk about the Urban Water Management Plan. This is not a new plan. We've done it in the past. We've prepared it. It's a document required by the state. And this slide is saying we're going to talk about what Urban Water Management Plan is very briefly, what the new requirements are since the last one we prepared 5 years ago. We'll talk a little bit about the report organization, and then the demand and supply. This is the balance that we look at every time, supply and demand, just like a bank account. And then we will also talk about water shortage contingency plan. So what is the Urban Water Management Plan? It's a long-term water supply adequacy and reliability report. It assesses that for the next 20 years. How do we look in terms of demand? Where do we expect our demands to be in 20 years? And where is our supply going to be in 20 years? And do we have enough? Where's the budget? Who should prepare one? If we serve more than 3,000 connections, or if we have 3,000 acre-feet per year that we sell, we are supposed to prepare one. And we have met that criteria a while back. So in 2015, we prepared one. And so this is done every 5 years. It's with years ending supposedly with 0 and 5. And that's why it's the 2020, 2015. although it doesn't always happen on that year. The guidebook was published, in March of this year from the state. So when the state is a little bit late because of COVID or other constraints, the plan gets delayed a little bit. So this 2020 Urban Water Management Plan complies with the new state requirements. Some things that you'd expect to hear about today is public participation, which is, meeting is about public participation. It's required by the state. We will talk about the water service area. We'll talk about existing demands, where we are versus future demands. And then we'll talk about the water shortage contingency plan. The guidebook, as I said, was issued in March of this year, and we moved quickly. So your city staff mobilized us very quickly, and we embarked on completing this plan and going through the approval and requirement process. Some of the new requirements, in the past, we used to look for drought condition, we used to look at 3 years only. And since then, the state determined that 3 years is not enough. We might get 5 years in a row as a drought. So they had us look at 5 consecutive years of drought. Where do we expect to see the city of Gilroy? And let's plan on it. What can we do about it when that happens? We also are supposed to look at seismic risk requirement, energy use information. These are informational in nature, and they're being reported elsewhere. They just want to make sure we are doing this. So these are requirements that we are adding. Water loss report for 5 years. In the last 5 years ago, last plan, they asked us to do a water loss audit every year, determine how much we're losing water or how much is unaccounted for water is. You've been doing this every year. You've been reporting this every year to the state. Here they're asking us, tell us for the past 5 years where you think you were. And this is the report organization. I will not go too much into detail. They are self-explanatory, introductions, system description. But these are the chapter outlines as not required, as recommended by the state, and we followed their recommendation. If this is how they like to see it, this is exactly how we were going to give it to them. And it goes on to the water supply characteristics, water supply reliability, all the way through Chapter 10, which is the plan adoption and submittal. But there's a process, as I mentioned, there's a public participation. The state wants to make sure we go through this, meet the participations. There are some dates that have to be met. So the initial notice to stakeholders was on April 11th. So we notified stakeholders that we are embarking on updating the urban water management plan. And then we proceeded next to the public outreach and notice. So we notified the public in the newspapers that this is going to be happening here today. And public review is October 4th. We are here going through the public hearing, and we'll continue with this public hearing through for the next couple of weeks to the City Council adoption date. That's when public hearing gets closed, and then the plan can be placed for adoption. A little bit about the system. On the water system, we have 56,000 in 2020, serving 56,000. We have 14,000 almost active service connections, 9 groundwater supply wells. That's our main source of supply, groundwater. We supply about 8,000 acre feet in 2020. Remember the minimum requirement, 3,000 acre feet? We meet that requirement. We are at 8,000 acre feet. We have about 200 miles of transmission mains and 10 storage tanks. We have a very good system on storage. This is a graphic that's intended to give you an idea of, on the left-hand side, it shows the customers types. And it shows that 94% almost of customers are residential customers. And the right-hand side pie chart shows that about 66% of water users are residential customers, not 94%. And that's because, like any community, we have commercial users, we have industrial users, and those all add up and have to be accounted for. This is a good graph that shows the green line. It shows population growth over the years and over the past 10 years. It shows how we've been growing. Population has been growing. The bars are showing how our customers are using water, gallons per day per capita. And notice that the gallons per day per capita is not increasing with population. The pink or the light red or the pink color is showing how we behave during droughts. Those are the drought periods. During droughts, maybe the first year or two we don't react, but then we react because we have guidance probably from local authorities or state authorities. So we've been holding steady, and as a community, you have succeeded in water conservation. So kudos. There was a SB X7-7. This is the 2009 Water Conservation Act, implemented way back when. And when they implemented this a while back, they said they would like every community in the state to achieve a goal of 20% reduction by 2020. That was a goal. And the mid-target was 2015. So in 2015, we met our target, and how did we do in 2020? Look at that. Congratulations. Gilroy met the target in 2020. And that concludes the goal of that plan. But the state isn't letting go. The state will continue to encourage us to conserve in different ways. So there will be more coming down the pipeline as they formalize the new guidelines. So we talked about demand versus supply. I will not go into this table. This is the balance sheet. And the balance sheet is not just Gilroy, because we're looking at the groundwater. Groundwater is connected. It's a groundwater basin that's connected all the way to Morgan Hill. And a better way to show how it works is this next infographic right here. This shows how we take water from the groundwater basin and how we put deposit water back into the basin, including recycled water, including recharge from value water that helps us in that. At the end of the day, we want a balance. And this is a balance that shows how we look in 2035. It's a snapshot. But the plan goes all the way to 2040. So we have a balance sheet in place. Now, when you look, the plan also asks us to look at normal years. How is the groundwater going to be? Then in single dry year, that happens quite often. But what if we get hit with 5 years of drought in consecutive? When that happens, those percentages on the right-hand side indicate the availability of the water is going to be less. So the balance sheet is not whole anymore, and we have to come up with a plan. And what's our plan? Well, the state says you can come up with something called Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And that's the second document that we'll talk about in a little bit. In this plan, we will be looking at, it's a standalone. It used to be a chapter in the Urban Water Management Plan, but the state wants to elevate the stature of this thing. It made it a standalone document that we can look at it and review it every year on its own. And in this plan, we used to have 3 phases. In this plan, they want us to look at 6 levels. Those are the new guidelines. Normal or alert, up to 10% conservation. And each one of those levels, there are different things that make that level happen. Reduce outdoors, maybe stop watering outdoors, period. First the grass dies, then the trees dies. But the number one priority is protect public life. That's our number one priority. So indoor water use is important. What they do want us to do, effective July 2022, is to do an assessment every year, starting in September. And month by month, compare our demands and supplies, for the next 6 months. And then your city staff will be evaluating, after this assessment every year, where do we stand, supply versus demand? How are we looking? Do we need to elevate the level of our shortage contingency and ask our residents to help us conserve so we can balance our worksheet for the year? And this will involve your staff coming to council every year after the assessment has been completed. They will come in with a recommendation. We're looking good this year, no worries. Or this year, we are recommending that we go to level 2. And just before the summer hits. So this is advanced planning. And that concludes the presentation for the two separate documents, two separate line items, the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. That's how the state wants us to consider them separate. And during adoption, they can be adopted together, but considered separately.
Understood. Thank you.
That
Gary,
concludes
did you
my
want to say anything before I go to questions?
No, only that we're available to answer any questions you
Right,
may have.
right. Okay, well, I certainly have a few, so I'll let, go ahead. I'll let council go first. Councilmember Romanios, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just had one quick question. With regard to that last slide about the reporting and kind of figuring out where we are, what is what's the lag on that? Because sometimes we know that when we, the circumstances change, but before we really figure out where we are in that moment, there's a period of time before we can recognize that. What is the typical lag for figuring out exactly where we are at a certain moment in time?
I'm not sure I understand the lag part. I think we're evaluating month by month. Where's our demand? Where's our supply? How did we do? Just to see if we are catching up compared to other years. Are we looking good? But we're not alone. We'll be looking at other indicators statewide. State might be issuing some we don't have any guidance on this yet. The only thing the state says is you will be doing this plan. And you will be assessing every year your supply and demand. I'm sorry. As to exactly the details, those have not been issued. The guidelines,
that's what it was about around the state, because it's an external party. I'm always kind of curious if they're going to be able to match the stated time period or not. But it sounds like right now the intent is every month.
Correct. Every month, starting in September of 1 year.
Okay.
And so the cycle continues. This is nonstop. You end up in June, July, and you have to make a decision. Do you declare a higher level of drought and ask the residents to help out, or are we good this year? Let's go on through the summer.
Okay, great.
The guidance again will be coming out soon. We don't have any direction at this time from the state.
Okay, well, I'll be curious to see what that looks like. But thank you. I think you answered my question for now.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, staff, for your hard work on this. Just question, is the agricultural industry included in industrial water use?
No, agriculture is not used. We include anyone that uses our system's supplies, anyone that uses water from the wells that we maintain, that the city of Gilroy maintains. Those are included. If they are agricultural wells, they have different guidelines, and for the longest time, they have been under the radar. Now they are in the radar, and they have to take their own action through groundwater management, and that's a separate report that's being done also on a regional level.
Thank you. Yeah, the number seemed a bit low considering our agricultural industry. Thank you for clarifying.
Wells aren't in our jurisdiction.
Right.
That's why. Okay, Councilmember Bracco.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused. The state of California tells us we can't turn down development. We have to keep developing and building houses. And the Santa Clara Valley Water District handles all of our recharging and all of our water. So what's the point of this? Because the water district tells us when we need to tell the citizens they got to conserve 20% or whatever. So what's the point of this report to us?
Councilmember Bracco, I think the decision is in our hand, not in the district's hand to conserve. I think the Valley of Water wants everyone to conserve in the county. I think, but it's this is the document that gives you the power to make your own assessment.
To go over and above?
To do your own water shortage contingency plan, your own decisions on which levels you want to be in. The county may do a system-wide guidance or recommendation, but at the end of the day, it's the city that has to make that decision. And the county doesn't do the decision just randomly. They do an assessment, so they do have the similar assessments. I think they have different models that they run. But this is a state guidance that we're going to look at in terms of elevating the shortage. The county has different models, and some of their models will determine when they scale back on their recharge, because they are part of the balance. They are in charge of the groundwater, and they are doing the balance. So they have a certain amount they recharge, not in Gilroy, but in Morgan Hill, but it counts. This is the same aquifer, so it does count. And if they have some balance sheets that dictate for them to scale back, they can, and in which case they will tell you, you're going to be short.
So does Valley Water have to do this same thing?
They have to do the same things county-wide. And so, but they also have their own model. It's too more complicated. I don't understand their model themselves, but they can, based on their model projections, determine that they might be scaling back on some of the recharge, which means we're going to be short a little bit. That will be part of our decision here, because we're comparing supply versus demand. Our supplies is not just the wells, it's how much groundwater is being recharged. So they influence our decision here, definitely will, based on their models.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give a try here because my questioning is sort of along the lines of Councilmember Bracco too. And this is a question we get, from a lot of our residents wondering how do we make determinations on our own water supply and how are we going to go forward in Gilroy. And our own John Varela, who's our water district representative, says that California state law requires that every local jurisdiction plan for housing to meet its fair share of projected growth. We know that. Cities and counties have a responsibility to ensure new development has an adequate water supply when approving development proposals. So that makes it sound like the cities can make that determination and therefore say, can't go forward with this development. But we all know that that's not what actually happens, because that type of monitoring goes through CEQA, and CEQA is what gets circumvented if you have a housing development coming from the state, correct?
Correct.
That meets all these requirements. You circumvent that. So that's the confusion out in the public is, what authority does this document, even though we're doing the water shortage contingency plan, what authority does it actually give us to make water supply determinations that we can actually use for the benefit of our residents?
And Madam Mayor, that's a great question.
Yeah,
and I'm going to
I know.
address it this way. I think we're talking here about the water shortage contingency plan. This is the tool that is in our hands to manage demand. If the supply isn't available, we can scale back on demand. The other document that we've been preparing and working on, the central part of this, is the Urban Water Management Plan. That's the document that projects for the next 20 years our demands, for the next 20 years, and in 5-year increments, our supplies during normal years. And this is what I showed, this table right here. That's what we look at. We look at groundwater volume, we look at availability of that groundwater, but we also project our demands. So that tells us that for the next 20 years, I'm not sure if that table is also here. So this is the table, this is the balance sheet through 2045. And look at the bottom line at the end, we're looking good at the end. We balance, the sheet balances through 2045 during a normal year. So then the next part of your question is about if you have a big development, as an example. If a development meets certain requirement, as an example, if it's more than 500 units or more than 500 acres, 500, I'm trying to find out, on commercials and industrials, it triggers something called a water supply assessment. So in addition to this, that large development has to demonstrate that they are in compliance within these guidelines. Did they exceed those? So that's a different study that is required and triggered when it exceeds a certain number of units. If it's less than 500 units, residential units, they don't have to. They can always refer to this. But this is the document that documents, that lists where our supplies are supposed to be, where our demands are supposed to be in 5 years. And we have very reasonable growth of, I think, 1.5% per year, which is similar to our historical growth. And these are the same projections that you will be seeing in your water master plan. The water master plan is a separate document that talks about the infrastructure needs and about the developments, where they will happen, what kind of pipelines do we need, what kind of storage do we need, what kind of supplies do we need, infrastructure. This is about supply sufficiency.
Right.
Do we have it?
I understand. So when we get back then to the water shortage contingency plan, the one that is meant to force everybody to use less water, does that apply strictly to residents, or does that also apply to commercial uses?
So let me explain it this way. A direct question is, Madam Mayor, it will apply to residents the most because Residences are the ones that are using water outdoors. That's where we can save water, outdoors. We would like everyone to save if they can, through guidance. I think everyone starts to save, but really, who can save? I can tell you that 95% of the water in a commercial space ends up back into the wastewater, and we take it back at the plant. Therefore, there's not an opportunity. If we squeeze them, we get 5%. Not much.
Okay, I'm
Whereas
asking
on
for the benefit
residential
of everybody
side-
listening too, so that's not, yeah, it's not that I don't understand, I just want everybody to hear your answer, so that
Absolutely,
people know.
And I hear
Yeah.
that a lot. It's like, why is the burden on residents? Why are we picking on it? It's because the water is being outdoors. We start with outdoors. Please stop using water outdoors. Let's protect public life. But we're not going to close
Right,
businesses.
so the Tree City thing may go. We'll see, I know, I'm
Not
kidding.
The trees are hard to replace. The first thing that goes is the lawn. That's the first thing.
For those who have lawns,
We don't like
yes.
to see brown lawns, but this is where it starts to happen first.
Right.
We like to protect trees because it takes a long time. I like gardening. My trees are precious. But if we get to that, I mean, we may not have a choice. We hope we don't get there, but that's a plan.
Okay.
We have a plan. Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. Does the school, do we know, does the school district share in our recycled water? So school district uses groundwater for watering their grounds?
And then recycled water is being used here in
No, but my question was school district.
the school
So the
district.
answer
Oh, I'm
is,
sorry,
school
no.
district is, yeah, there's just a lot of lawn there.
That could be plans in the future.
Yeah.
In their
Okay.
new buildings, though, it is greener.
I understand
brown
that.
now, so.
I know. I'm just letting the public know where all the water is going and where these efforts are going so that people understand. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay? Thank you. All right, are there any other questions? Okay. How are we moving forward with this? It's a public hearing. I need to open public comment. Okay, thank you.
And we don't need to disclose ex parte communications, though it's on the agenda, because it's not a quasi judicial kind of hearing. There's no applicant.
Okay.
We have Ron Perkish.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, community. Why? Why are we here today talking about this? In California, we have a dam system, a system with copious amounts of water that we store every year. Snow melt, rainwater. It's supposed to last 5 years, to last through a drought, but it hasn't. It's only been 2 years. Why? I think I know the answer. I think I've expressed that answer to many of you. It's because through years of lawsuits by environmentalists like the Sierra Club, who have taken that water and instead of using it for recharging our groundwater, they've been flushing it out to the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. 80% of that water. If we had that water today, we could still be generating electricity for our own use, hydroelectricity. We would have enough water for probably 3 or 4 years to go ahead and recharge our underground aquifers and the Central Valley too. But no, because of environmentalists, we have to flush 80% of our water down to the Pacific Ocean when it was supposed to be held in abeyance for 5 years for our needs. And not only that, but even when wanting to get new resources, building new dams, the Sierra Club and their environmentalist friends say no. Governor Brown, if you remember, he tried to get 30 miles of water stored in these big bladders, 30 miles. And the Sierra Club said no. And because they have $100 million in their bank, they have clout. And because they have clout, we are here today talking about this nonsense. Thank you.
All right, do we have another speaker?
None.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. And what's the possible action here? Moving on to the next.
There's really no action to take at this point. As I think Gary indicated, there will be a second council meeting to adopt the water plan, unless the council wishes to give direction to staff based upon the presentation today.
Would this be coming back under consent?
It'd be coming back as an action item. because we have to have a resolution for approval.
So not under
I
consent?
think it would be unfinished business, probably.
Okay, good, so we'd have a chance to,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, we're mandated, are we not? It's state mandate to have those 6 levels? We're not, that is not staff's recommendation on their own. That's because the state is telling you that's what you have to tell us.
Correct.
And that it only applies to residents and not any other users of groundwater.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking to
All right.
Tony here. He's nodding his head, so yes.
Right. Okay, everybody clear?
Very good.
All right,
So
thank
we're bringing
you.
this back on the 18th. If I could ask one thing, Madam Mayor,
Mm.
you did say close the public hearing. If we could keep the public hearing open.
Oh, sorry, I meant close it for tonight.
That's just.
It's on the
so-
agenda to close it.
Yeah, I think technically, if we need to reopen the public hearing at the next meeting, we can do that, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
but
we
it
need to
it
keep
doesn't
it
mean
open.
anything for it to be continually open for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can reopen it, though.
Very good.
Okay, so tonight's closed. All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, unfinished business. Okay, this is item 9A, City Council position on VTA's transit-oriented development. And Jimmy, I think you're going to give us this report.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. This is an update to an item that was on your agenda a few months ago. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background and then turn it back over to Council for deliberation. At the August 2nd City Council meeting, the Council majority voted to request from Valley Transit Authority to delay a decision for a request for offer for a transit-oriented development at the Gilroy Transit Center. At the next VTA meeting on the 5th, that request was accepted and a 2-month timeline was provided to essentially delay the issuance of that request for offer. On September 14th, Council had a study session with staff of the Valley Transit Authority, or VTA, and was able to discuss about transit in Gilroy as a baseline for what the future of transit will be. Since that time, myself and the mayor have met and discussed at various times with staff at VTA about the long-term plan for the Gilroy Transit Center. And in discussions with others, Caltran and High Speed Rail, we did have a meeting with High Speed Rail for a community input meeting. The conversation of a long-term specific plan for that area has been brought up as a need, and I think it's generally acknowledged by those representatives at VTA, High Speed Rail, Caltrans, and from city staff perspective that until a long-term strategic use plan of that land is put together and understood by all those involved, it's very difficult to get behind ideas about what to do in that facility in that area. So after that point, after discussions with the general manager of VTA, we were informed just last week that they had no intention of continuing that item at the beginning of, or in October, until they could have their own internal plan about how to address some of those concerns that we've had about the long-term use of that plan. And most specifically, the reliance on anything from high-speed rail. That has been a project that has been in the works for, I believe, a decade now and is expected to go on for several decades. And so any kind of coordination of efforts that relies on high-speed rail is one that really needs to be looked at closely, because if that is one of our solutions, we need to know the timeline for when that potential project will be completed. So there's a lot of moving pieces with this type of idea that came from VTA, and so we did receive that notification that they are not currently going forward, but will be developing a plan. I think it's important to occasionally check in with council to understand the direction to staff and the position of council to VTA so that they are aware of where the city of Gilroy stands. There was a letter at one time from the real estate director at VTA that basically said that if council has the final decision, and so we're continually trying to get information for council and also check in to make sure that we are headed in a direction that the majority of council wants us to go into. So the last piece I will, as my report, is that this has also been a good opportunity for us as city staff to engage some of our county partners, maybe in a way we haven't before. I've been on conversations with the director of supportive housing and also Destination Home about potential sites within the city, not just at the transit center, but at the transit area that could be looked upon for Measure A funding for affordable housing. So I do believe there's been a lot of good momentum about getting us at the table, and us being Gilroy, and about having these discussions of how we can be supportive of these projects and how we can receive funding in our community to provide additional housing. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jimmy. I've got some things to add too as the VTA rep, but I'm going to ask council if you have any questions first. No? No? Okay. Then as the VTA rep, it's important to me to know that I've got the council majority supporting what it is we're bringing forward to VTA. And it's been a lot of work, certainly on the part of staff and on myself, to get us to where we are, which is to identify transit service first in Gilroy, because the 68 bus is the only thing that exists at the Gilroy Transit Center that qualifies anything as transit oriented there. It is just that bus, and that is not a bus that gets people off of 101. That's not a commuter bus. That's a bus that takes over an hour and a half, hour 40 to get to Dearborn. So trying to get with VTA and Caltrain to determine how much parking should be there if there was just one express bus, for example, that came every 15 minutes, because that's the frequency that defines high-quality transit, and if there's a fourth Caltrain that is scheduled to start in 2020. So it is nobody's intention to let that land just sit with neither transit or housing, not at all. I am hoping that this starts that discussion on transit that gets that really moving, and I would like the council to weigh in on supporting staff's involvement with VTA to get that going, and with high-speed rail, that we continue discussions with Destination Home and the Office of Supportive Housing for locations that are near transit, even if it's not high-quality transit yet, and that we support VTA staff's decision to do that before proceeding with this RFO on this development. So that's why this item's on the agenda. That's what I'm looking for. Nobody wants to see that land sit there doing nothing. We want to see a viable transit center there so that we can help alleviate what's happening on 101 and get people, and manage the demand for driving, manage the increased demand for driving that continues to come. Okay, I see Rebecca Armendariz wants to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. So would what you're proposing, would that explicitly exclude development of housing on the VTA site?
I'm not, that's VTA's determination. I'm proposing that we support VTA staff's decision to first address viable transit before going that route, and that we support our staff's involvement in that decision.
Because the reason I ask is because I heard you mention looking at other sites, right? With the Office of Supportive Housing.
That's because Measure A funding is running out.
Right.
So it's a separate thing.
Right. But it was mentioned. So that's why
yes.
I want to clarify that it was not, your intention isn't to exclude
Measure A funding?
No, to exclude this site, the VTA site, from possible, or that our opinion would be that we want that site excluded from possible development in the future.
No, what I'm asking is that we not render a decision on that until viable transit exists there first.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what VTA staff has agreed to. They want to discuss viable transit first. Nobody, I don't think anybody can say what will ever be anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying we could pen a letter that expresses our preference, right? And so, but that's not what you're asking for.
I'm not asking for I'm asking for us to have whether the majority of this council supports VTA staff's position, which is not to bring this back for development at this time. The future is the future. And their reason for doing it is to address viable transit first, because in the process of the study session that we held, we discovered that there wasn't a future plan for transit. It couldn't answer how many spaces were needed if you had one more bus or if you had another train. And the suggestion to move the buses to Monterey Road is the only tool in the arsenal to provide any parking should transit ever materialize later. So instead of just addressing how do you accommodate a housing project, we're looking to address how do you accommodate viable transit. Then you can ask, how do you accommodate housing?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, I think I echoed that comment in one of our earlier meetings as well, is that it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You got to have the transit there first before you can talk about transit-oriented development.
Exactly.
So very much in favor of that reshifting of the priorities and the focus there. So that would be my position.
Okay. So I guess do I need a vote on this? Do we do?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment?
And then I'll take a turn too.
Oh, I didn't even see, sorry. Councilmember Hilton and then Councilmember Tovar, and then I'll go to public comment.
Thank you. We had over 300 English and Spanish-speaking constituents that provided input and shared a clear message that affordable housing is desperately needed, and they want to preserve parking. They clearly spoke up in multiple community meetings facilitated by Gilroy residents Jorge Mendoza and Rebecca Garcia earlier this year. City staff and members of this council were invited and participated. Both affordable housing and preservation of parking has been promised in the project concept. But the bar in parking and transit keeps getting raised. In 2020, 75% of our homes in Gilroy were single family, 10% were multifamily, 12% were medium or large multifamily. According to recent data provided by ABAG in Gilroy, 21% of our households are considered extremely low income, making less than 30% of AMI or $49,700 or less. With less land available to build multifamily, we need to take advantage of all underutilized parking lots. I also recently heard a restaurant owner express their concerns for the lack of workforce, then after stated that they have never seen low-income housing work at a train station. The service industry workers have been priced out of Gilroy and are living in overcrowded housing because of our policies in the past. Unless you're planning to pay a true living wage, they deserve to work and live within walking distance of their jobs. Parking lots, especially empty ones, do nothing for Gilroy to maximize our collection of property tax, and the TOD mix project will generate significant property and sales tax. The most housing vulnerable in our community don't have the luxury for waiting around for possible needs of future subsidized parking. The transit planners at our study session from VTA told us that they've tried everything to get Gilroy to use trains and buses more. I don't blame them for not focusing on Gilroy because it's in the past, we didn't try and shift our residents to using transit either in any of our policies. And the Transportation Agency for Monterey County also stated that they will be breaking ground on their rail service from the south soon. They're already at 75% design, and they do not need the parking spaces in Gilroy. And lastly, we have homeless on our streets and hundreds of not facing rent burden from the eviction moratorium that has now been lifted last Friday. Yes, we will always have a chance tomorrow to build housing, but we have a chance today. And I just want to commend, city admin to you for reaching out and, speaking with the Office of Supportive Housing and Destination Home, finding good sources for those Measure A funds, and then also at the same time, looking at places where we can become a partner with our land. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also in agreement with Councilmember Laura Munoz. I would also be in support of directing you to submit a letter. As someone who's utilized public transportation for 25 years, I'm starting to see, as we know, there's less and less options now, and now I'm finding myself having to be one of those many cars on 101 every day, and it's frustrating, obviously, because I don't have many options, and I don't like to drive, every single day. But I mean, it is what it is. So, so I would also be in support of this as well.
Thank you. All right, public comment. We will open that. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Rocco.
Let's not forget, VTA stands for Valley Transportation Agency, not Valley Housing Agency. The taxpayers voted to give them the money to set their system up and buy these properties, and now they want to try to sell them to developers for a profit. And they're actually working against their own charge. They're going to create housing that people from San Jose are going to move down here for the affordability and then commute back up to San Jose, causing more traffic on 101. It makes no sense what they're doing, except they need money, and they've become a money-generating entity now instead of what they're supposed to be. This is not a good location. It wasn't that long ago, I'm sure Fred remembers, when those parking lots were packed full, and they will be again. So and then what's going to happen, they're going to eat up the parking, then it's surface parking, then it's on the city to try to build a parking garage because nobody can park in the area. It's a bad location for housing. There's way better locations that affordable housing can be put. But one of the things that really irritates me is they want us to build affordable housing in Gilroy so they can continue to build multi-million-dollar condominiums in San Jose. And I just think that's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public comment?
We have 3 comments. First is Stephanie L.
Andy, is it okay if I speak?
What?
Is it okay if I speak?
Of course. You're
Yes,
speaking on this agenda item?
Yeah, it's not my place to give you permission, but yes, it is okay.
I'm just checking, like, okay. Okay, so the VTA is proposing to remove our parking lot and fill it with housing for a lack of parking for those residents. They make a lot of claims, but they do not provide the research or data to support it. There are a lot of factors here, but I just want to focus on parking. In the material they presented for this project, they claim 1 in 3 low-income households own a vehicle. The VTA has also created other studies that claim the opposite, that 3 in 4 households own a vehicle that are low income. So what's the truth? Transparent studies consistently show that 80% of low-income residents, not households, but residents, have at least 1 vehicle. To say that low-income residents don't own vehicles is a hurtful stereotype. Where will these 80% of the people living there park? Will the city and taxpayers have to manage the parking in downtown and surrounding neighborhoods? Will the city require parking permits and tow those in violation, putting additional financial burden on those already marginalized, like they do down at the parking lot near the Alexander Apartments? I've talked to the property manager there. They do that. He hates it, but it has to be done. So why is this really happening? We've all been asking this. The Civil Grand Jury of Santa Clara County report entitled Inquiry into the Governance of the Valley Transportation Authority of 2019 says, and I quote, "The grand jury finds the VTA to be in the midst of a financial crisis with an overwhelming budget deficit with very little to no reserves," end quote. Among other things, they claim their study shows they fail to adequately monitor their financial performance, is unwilling to review and reconsider decisions made in the past years or even past decades. In conclusion, the real data doesn't support the success of this project. The project, in my opinion, is more of the same that doesn't do justice to the folks that need assistance. It removes resources from our community, and the VTA doesn't take responsibility for the development after it's been built. It puts the burden on the residents and the community, while developers and landowners who have a fiduciary responsibility and position, in my opinion, are laughing all the way to the bank. I have resources to provide if you would like to see those, and I'm also at this time opposed to moving the buses out of the VTA lot, but that's another thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
Next we have Jorge Mendoza.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Mendoza, and I'm here to translate for him.
Okay.
Mi hija, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes, Mayor, miembros del concilio.
Good afternoon, council members.
You need to speak into the microphone.
Good afternoon, council members.
Yo estoy agradecido de que ustedes sean nuestros representantes y nuestros servidores públicos aquí en Gilroy.
He's very appreciative that you guys are our public servers.
Y también de que ustedes tienen la última palabra sobre lo que es bueno para la gente que vivimos aquí en esta comunidad.
And the fact that you have the final say over what happens to the people of Gilroy.
Estoy aquí porque leí en la agenda de que querían escribir una carta a VTA para dar sus sugerencias sobre el proyecto de la construcción de los departamentos.
He read in the agenda that you will be writing a letter to VTA to discuss what will happen at the train site.
Y solo quería decirles que estoy agradecido por ser servidores tanto de la gente rica como de la gente pobre, como dueños de propiedad, como dueño de compañías que dan trabajo a nuestra gente.
And all he wanted to say is that he is thankful that you represent the business owners, the property owners, and the people of Gilroy who don't own any of those.
Parte de lo que nosotros apoyamos la construcción de los departamentos es porque muchas de nuestras familias no pueden comprar su propia casa.
We support the building of the affordable housing because most Hispanic people and Latinx people in Gilroy cannot afford to buy their own homes.
Sabemos y entendemos que el estacionamiento es un problema grande, pero yo tengo la confianza que aquí en la ciudad de Gilroy, VTA y Destination Home, tenemos gente inteligente que puede trabajar en este proyecto para encontrar soluciones también para el estacionamiento.
We know that parking is a problem, but we trust that the people of VTA and that you, the council members, can find a solution to that problem.
El proyecto de construcción de vivienda es a largo plazo y pienso que durante ese tiempo también se puede trabajar en soluciones para el estacionamiento.
The long-term plan for the affordable housing development is something that you can probably fit in how to make more parking spaces.
Y bueno, mi deseo es, pero es su decisión final, que podamos encontrar soluciones para, en vez de detener la construcción, podamos encontrar ideas para seguir trabajando en la construcción de los departamentos de VTA.
And his final wish is that instead of stopping the development, we find a solution to the other problems.
Gracias.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next speaker.
Lastly, we have Ron Kirkish.
Hello again, Mayor. Councilman Hilton made a throwaway line or a off-the-cuff comment that Gilroy has never done anything about trying to get people ridership using VTA and others. That's not true. I've been sitting in this for a long time, right? I mean, for many, many years, I've been sitting here watching and listening and speaking. And I've heard on many occasions, Councilman, the subject of VTA, bus, train, ridership come up many, many times. I think your fellow council members will agree. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any others? Okay, closing public comment. So I just want to clarify after the speakers that what we're trying to do is a letter in support of what VTA has now suggested. Okay, VTA staff has now this is not on their agenda for October, and their staff has said that they are going to wait and internally analyze transit first, and that is what I am trying to make sure is still the position of the Gilroy City Council. Whether it's unanimous or not is not the issue. Okay, so with that, would I call for a vote? This is something to vote on, right?
Mayor,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this can be done voting by light. This is one of your examples.
Okay, great. Councilmember Tovar, did you want to make a comment
Oh,
first?
no, I was just saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then, Christina, do you need me to read anything or do anything, or you got it?
I got it, yeah.
Okay, so that passed 5-2. All right, thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is item B, appointment of members of the Youth Commission with terms ending September 30th, 2023. We have 4 seats. We interviewed the candidates at our last meeting.
Oh, I need to recuse myself.
Oh, okay, we interviewed the candidates at the last meeting. So at this meeting, I'm just going to go down the line and ask for your vote of 4. Okay, and I'll start with Councilmember Bracco.
Isaac, Lavender, and Ezekiel.
Isaac, Lavender, Ezekiel, you get one more. There are 4 seats.
Alexis.
Okay, Councilmember Marks.
Isaac, Lavender, Aiden, and Alexis.
Isaac, Lavender, Aiden, and Alexis. All right. Councilmember Hilton.
Ezekiel, Isaac, Alexis, and I'll take a stab at Novelli.
Okay.
Novelli Zavala.
Ezekiel, Isaac, Alexis, and
Zavala.
Novelli. Yeah, Zavala. Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Tovar. Vice Mayor Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. Ezekiel, Alexis, Isaac, and Diego.
And Diego. All right. Councilmember Leroy Munoz.
Isaac, Lavender, Alexis, and Ezekiel.
And Ezekiel. Okay. And mine are, where am I here? Aiden, Diego, Isaac, and Alexis. Okay. So do we compare notes, Christina? Or I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Isaac. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Alexis. And then I've got 4 for Ezekiel. And then 3 for Lavender. Wow, that works. There's not a tie. Is that what you've got?
That's what I have, yeah.
Okay, so those are our new commissioners. Isaac Huang, Lavender Huang, Ezekiel Lopez, and Alexis Miller. Congratulations to those 4. Okay, introduction of new business. All right, item A, rejection of proposals for the safe parking program. Bryce, you're going to be giving this report?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
One second over here. Yes, so Mayor and Council, as mentioned, this is a recommendation to Council to reject the proposal for the safe parking program. Just so again, a brief background, this is one of the 14 recommendations, safe parking program is one of the 14 recommendations that was approved by the City Council. It's actually assigned by the Unhoused Ad Hoc Committee as the highest priority. An RFP was issued in late July for a 1-year pilot program with 2 one-year extension options for looking at 15 parking spaces. And a minimum was issued to remove the cash value of $50,000 as a cap, remove that, and then provide opportunities for a potential proposal to mandate attendance at a case management system, as well as a couple of other items as far as the proposal structure on costs and identifying costs. And so the RFP submittal period closed in early September. The city received one proposal from South County Compassion Center. However, in their proposal, no site was identified about where they're going to host the safe parking program, nor did they provide any statement of an intent from a property owner to host it. These were required by the RFP. Additionally, the cost of the proposal was a little over $500,000 and would require a large use of city reserves. The largest cost elements include staffing of 4.2 full-time equivalencies of site managers for $138,000, followed by unarmed security at $132,500. We had heard comments initially that the security might be a financial issue, but even removing that, the bid would still be $378,000. And to put that into perspective, that would consume the entire remaining discretionary ARPA funds from the city and still require additional general fund reserves. As a comparison to Morgan Hill, we're looking at their contribution to their safe parking program. Theirs is $30,000 for 8 parking spaces. With our 15 parking stalls, basically twice the number of services, we're looking at 17 times the cost, which is significant. So based on the fact of the largest consideration and issue is the fact of no site being proposed, we're requesting and recommending to council to reject the proposals. Again, we want to stress that the proposal is being rejected, not the pursuit of the safe parking program. This is still a priority recommendation that council approved. We'll still pursue that. So if council does reject the proposal, it allows staff to directly engage local service providers. We're looking to basically structure a team of different providers to provide that. It allows us to share resource burdens and costs, jointly provide services for a pilot safe parking program. That completes the recommendation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bryce. All right, council members, I'll come to you first. Councilmember Bracco.
Bryce, do we have any idea why they want to charge us so much more than they do in Morgan Hill?
Looking at the proposal, even though the proposal only recommends a 12-hour stay for residents, it looks like they're structuring it as a 24-hour service. It's definitely personnel heavy, site managers. 4.2 FTE, that's a lot of staff time. But aside from that, it looks like it may be the fact that in Morgan Hill, there's different agencies providing different services, and a lot of it sounds like it's being donated. So there's a lot of faith-based organizations involved. In this proposal, it is essentially one agency taking on the lead of everything.
When I was reading their proposal, it seems that they're just they're being a go-between between us and these other agencies that are actually going to be running the place.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we just contract with those other agencies?
That is obviously an option to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Marks. Not anymore, but your mic is not on.
Oh, now it is. Okay. That was my problem that I had also when we looked at this. We are for the safe parking, and I'm glad you brought that up, Bryce. It's just that this RFP was not written as it should have been, with close to $400,000 was devoted to staff, and it was only going to serve 15 people. Something was wrong there, and I don't mind if Compassion Center goes back and redoes this RFP. I was looking through the letters tonight where one person said, why doesn't the city go to the churches and ask for lots? Our committee did. We had a meeting with all of the ministers, and no one would take it. So that's why it was put into this RFP for whoever took it to come and propose where the site is going to be. I don't think any of us would be opposed if someone else came along, or even if the Compassion Center redid it and came to us and said we found a spot. But I think realistically they have to get real about the cost of their employees. I would rather see that $400,000 go towards helping more homeless victims and not staff. So I will not be supporting this RFP, the Safe Parking Program RFP proposal. Maybe I should say I'm not supporting the RFP proposal, because I am supporting safe parking, but not with the way this is packaged. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Armendariz is next.
So I've written grants before in different capacities, and when I looked into this RFP, I was disappointed to see how rigid and how high the standards were set, and they seemed very much unattainable. And so I'm not surprised that that we only had one applicant, and that the costs that they are submitting for are so high, given the fact that this kind of work is very labor intensive, it's very case management intensive, and service intensive. There's a number of us who do it voluntarily, and it's incredibly draining and time consuming. It's a labor of love nonetheless, but for us to have viable nonprofits that can provide this in a professional way, I think that we have to put our money where our mouth is, and this was a priority as set by the ad hoc committee, and so we need to look at what contingencies, what conditions we can put on this before outright rejecting it. I don't think that we can put out $500,000. Not that we shouldn't, but I don't think that we have it earmarked in our budget as part of our process earlier this year. But I think instead of an outright rejection, we can grant an amount that we have designated to the Compassion Center, and then we can ask staff to explore grants, alternative funding sources such as our CDBG money, any matching funds that the county could provide, or private funders and other nonprofits in the area as well. And I'd love to see us move forward with a task force made up of service providers and stakeholders that can look at the services that need to be provided, the best practices for safe parking, and how we can make this work, because our encampments are growing. They're dangerous. They're, yesterday, 15 minutes after taking some food out to the encampments by my house, there was a fire that was set accidentally because folks are just trying to cook and feed themselves. And today on my way over here, there was a gentleman who took his own life. I can only imagine the conditions that he was in physically and mentally and emotionally that caused him to take his own life right there from a tree behind Community Solutions in front of his fellow street dwellers, in front of his neighbors who are also there on Las Animas Avenue. And so we have to maintain this as our priority. And I think whatever we can do, we are the city council, we are the representatives of the city who have put this forth as a priority. And none of our other goals are direct service related, they're aesthetic. And so we have to do something, and I think we have to make this work somehow.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hilton. Well, that's sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. Gilroy has a housing supply and affordability crisis of historic proportions. The consequences of failing to effectively and aggressively confront this crisis is hurting our residents, robbing future generations of the chance to call Gilroy home, and stifling economic opportunities for workers and businesses, worsening poverty and homelessness, and undermining our environmental and climate objectives. The City of Gilroy recently endorsed a community plan to end homelessness, and supporting creative solutions like a safe parking program in conjunction with supportive services is one way that we can immediately address the current needs for shelter. The fact that we only received one proposal shows me that we still have a lot of healing to do with our partner organizations that are part of the community plan to homelessness. I understand that the RFP was modified and extended for a week. Thank you to staff for working with South County Compassion and listening to their input. Listening to input from our current partners is an important step. I don't expect that we get this right on the first time around. We did get 10 public comment letters tonight in support that basically show that they want us, like I think majority of us are saying, is continue to move forward, try to get this right. I just like to say too that our community and regional partners are out there watching us to support it, and they want to support us. There's private funding and public funding, as Jimmy's finding out from his contacts at Destination Home. And I think it's really important that we try to be successful on this. I don't support an outright rejection of this RFP, but I am confident that it can move forward with the homeless task force and really working with our local community and our partners. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. Bryce, remind us all these. First of all, let me state something. The ad hoc committee of myself, Councilmember Bracco, and Martz, this was one of our priorities where we want to see this happen, obviously. But the RFP came back incomplete, because of the information that was missing. Remind us again, the safe parking program in Morgan Hill, the annual cost for that?
From a staff report that they produced in 2019 and was stated again when we talked to Rebecca Garcia back in July, they submit $30,000 for the parking program. It's titled specifically for case management. Right. But they do have, from my understanding, other partner organizations that contribute towards that program.
Right. But it's nowhere near the $500,000 that's being requested. Again, and as if the information that Councilmember Martz said, the $400,000 is going to staff. There's some concern there because that's the majority of the money and not going to the people who need it, the most, and only 15 sort of people that are going to be serviced. That's concerning, that amount of money. And I think Councilmember Armendariz came up with some wonderful suggestions, grants and other options like that, because I think it's a priority for all of us, but I think I'm just concerned that if this moves forward, it opens up the door to many other RFPs that come incomplete, Because, I mean, this is really an incomplete RFP proposal. But again, I'm not in favor of completely rejecting it, but I think we need that information to make a sound decision, because what was mentioned earlier, yes, we met with all the churches, and none of them were willing to sort of house this program, and a lot of it had to do with the schools, the children, and the safety. But I think, again, we need to come up with other idea suggestions and make sure that the money, that if we decide to move forward with it, is going to be utilized to the people who really, really need it. And again, I understand that staff needs to be paid, but that amount of money compared to what the amount of money going to the people who need it, I just can't see that happening, you know. And I think for me, it would be an injustice, you know, because I think the people who need the help the most are going to get a very low sort of amount of money here. So again, if there's other suggestions, other thoughts, other ways to go around this and sort of see this happen, I'm in favor of it, without a doubt, but I just can't move forward with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember LaRoe Munoz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think speaking to the story highlighted by Councilmember Armendariz, you know, it speaks to the importance of getting this right. We all recognize that this is a priority coming out of the ad hoc committee. I think for me, and you know, reviewing all of the letters that came in from people, I just want people to understand again that we're going to get one shot at this. And the problem is that if we move forward with a deficient proposal, what's going to happen is we're setting ourselves up for failure. And then people are going to look at it after the pilot and say, see, we shouldn't have done that. It didn't work, so let's not try to move forward with that again. And I think that's the problem. We're looking for a long-term solution here. I mean, we've got an exorbitant cost far exceeding, you know, what any of us would have expected when this RFP went out. We've got, you know, no host statement of intent. I mean, it's as you said, it's an incomplete application. We've got to do this thing right, and we risk doing long-term damage to this idea if we don't do it right. So, as much as I want to see this move forward with us trying to be thoughtful and creative, we've got to do it with the right application, or we're going to do ourselves long-term disservice.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, is that another round of people waiting to speak?
Just a question.
Well, no. First of all, you're not next, and second of all, I would like to go before we go for a second round. Okay, so my comments are that for anybody who doesn't already know, in our packets, page 357 is precisely where the amount of money, the $511,000 that the Compassion Center submitted, exactly where it goes. So anyone in the public who wants to know what the proposal was, or is, I guess I should say, it's on that page. And $202,929, so almost $203,000, is personnel costs. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's personnel costs for case manager, site manager, executive, personnel costs. But if you're comparing, the way this came about was because Morgan Hill started the pilot program and had it for a couple years. Looking at that as an example, the city of Morgan Hill did not pay these personnel costs. City of Morgan Hill contributed $30,000 at a time when a private property owner named the Morgan Hill Bible Church was offering to put up to 8 vehicles for only women and children, not couples, not men, just women and children. They wanted to do something for homeless women and children, and the Compassion Center is running it with a contribution from the city of $30,000. So this proposal is just very, very, very different, and that is why I take Councilmember LaRoe Munoz and Councilmember Tovar's comments. I agree with them, because we need to go down a road that we can actually work with and fund, and this is not something that we can fund, nor is there a location, because we have spoken to all of the faith-based property owners in Gilroy, and no one as of yet is willing. So you have to first have a site to know where this is going and vet that out, and then discuss the cost. So on top of the $203,000 personnel, then there's another $261,000 in operating costs, also way above what the city of Morgan Hill does. So all in contributions. Of that $261,000, though, half of that is security that doesn't exist in Morgan Hill. So even, like Bryce said, even if you took that out, You're still left with another 132 on top of the 203. So that's where this proposal stands. Okay? Wanted to throw those 2 cents in. Okay, so now we'll go to round 2 for council members. Actually, I should go to public comment, I think, before round 2. Okay, I would like to open public comment, and then we'll come back to council. Okay.
We have 2 public comments. First is Noshaba Asfad.
Am I allowed to take this off? I'm vaccinated, or do I need to keep it on?
Yeah, you can go ahead and lower it. Yeah.
So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Councilmember Hilton, for acknowledging my email that I was sent to all council members. I just want to ask, how many of you council members have visited the Safe Car Park, the Gilroy Armory, or the Compassion Center personally? So thank you for doing that. I think it's critical in order to say that this is a passion of ours and it's critical and it's priority, that we know what they are. Everyone in this room is privileged, and I say that. We have different levels of privilege. This budget, we can say, yeah, it's way beyond what Morgan Hill does, but we got to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. They have property that they're able to use. Putting the cart before the horse, that, well, it's incomplete. It's incomplete for a reason. There's only one applicant for a reason, is we have to take a look saying, well, there's no property that's identified. You've talked to all the faith groups. Well, what about some of the Gilroy city property? Can we explore that? We've got to get creative. Homelessness is not going to go away on its own. And coming up here and making us make ourselves feel better when we drive in our Teslas and Lexus, and I'm guilty myself, and we see them, we think, oh gosh, that's heartbreaking. What are we doing about it? We need a practical solution, and what I'm proposing is let's go back instead of flat out saying, we got one proposal, but it's just outrageous in cost, and let's deny it. Why not say, let's take this, it's the only one we got, and let's see what we can do to make it work. Because if we don't make something work, we're going to be here 10, 15. My granddaughter, who's only 8 months old, is going to sit here, standing at the stand, appealing for the same thing if we don't come up with some solution. So I strongly urge all of you to visit the Morgan Hill Safe Car Park. It's not the same. It's an amazing program. My family's been volunteering to interact. This is different. 24 hours is different. You go there right now, there is a woman who has 4 children, a newborn, a child who's 1, and others who are less than 10 years old, who every 7 o'clock every morning has to gather up her children and leave. How many of you have children? How easy would that be? So please,
it's all right. You can take a minute. Do we have other speakers?
we need to be responsible and come up with a solution.
Thank you.
Ask them to revise it. Ask them what we can do to make it work. There are too many areas in Gilroy where the property is sitting empty and the city owns that. Look into that. And I, as a business owner, I own 2 businesses. I'm an educator by profession. I will put my money where my mouth is as well. But I need you, city council members, who represent us, to understand this problem and be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Next we have Jan Burstein-Charjan.
Thank you, council members, and I'll try to get through this. I'm babysitting tonight, and I don't want my assistant to wake up. First of all, we know I have been a proponent for years of safe parking, so thank you, council, for supporting a safe parking program. As you know, when I was with Gilroy, what was then Gilroy Compassion Center, I was there for the start of the safe park in Morgan Hill. And now, as the board chair for Pit Stop Outreach, I started writing a proposal for the RFP for Gilroy's Safe Park, and let me tell you why I didn't submit it. Because what you're asking for is very different from the program in Morgan Hill. It's orders of magnitude different. The number I came up with, and you know, I'll pull in volunteers and cut it to the bone, and I came up with $387,000. And that is just what was specified, what was required by the RFP. That's the cost of what you asked for. That's the lowest cost, okay? And you were saying it was a $50,000 grant. And I called the county and said, well, is there any way I can get $320,000 to match what the city of Gilroy, so I can submit this? And they said there's nothing coming up on safe parking for the next 2 years. I said, okay, I can't submit. I think what we need to do is to just put a very specific task force together of the multiple service providers, the Office of Supportive Housing, Destination Home, and invite Life Moves, who successfully runs safe parking in San Jose and Sunnyvale and all over Santa Clara County. Let's bring in the people who are doing it successfully every day tonight and know how to do it. And let's come in and all put our heads together and look for a parking lot. And the city has to be at the table too. We've all got to do this as a team, because as a team we can get it done. But if we make an RFP that puts the nonprofits in competition against each other, we can't do it. We have to be working together. So, and we absolutely can, and we absolutely will. Let's identify a parking lot. We just heard that there's a giant parking lot along Monterey that's going to have neither transit nor housing there for a few years, at the very least. So perhaps that's a temporary solution. Let's, like we just heard, let's get creative. If we make this a community effort to find the best place, we'll find it. Let's also remember the Morgan Hill program was capped at 8 vehicles, and Gilroy asked for 15. So, this was just orders of magnitude different from what was being done in Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill Bible Church puts in all the money for the venue, for the electricity, for the insurance, all kinds of things. So anyway, 0 seconds. Thank you very much. Let's move forward together.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
None.
Okay, closing the public comment and coming back to council, and it will be Councilmember Armendariz first.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for staff as to whether they reached out to the applicant and let them know their concerns, or how has the process been so far in, communicating with them as to if they were flexible on these numbers or services.
Thank you, Mr. Armendariz. I'll start, and Bryce, if you want to help, please jump in. This is a competitive RFP, and so we are able to do some discussion with them on understanding their numbers, but when you do a competitive RFP, it's not a negotiation. And so that's why we're only recommending that you reject it, because we determined that it's non-responsive. It means that we put out the information asking for the submittal, they didn't give it back to us. So unfortunately, it's kind of a black and white issue in that if the RFP is not responsive, we as staff actually have to reject it because they did not answer the questions. So that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road, though. And as you can see in the recommendation, there may be a different way for staff to go about it, and it may not be the RFP process. But one of the things that the committee really worked on as well is that if you're going to provide safe housing, you have to provide services. And it's the services part that really adds to the cost exponentially. If you wanted us to have a parking lot with 8 spaces and no security and no services, that's very doable. But the whole onus was to provide an opportunity for connection to services and direct services. And that's what we put in the RFP, but we don't feel that we received that type of response. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Councilmember Marks.
Well, I think Jimmy really addressed some of the stuff that I was going to mention about, because I was very curious when Councilmember Armendariz said about the high standards that were written in the RFP. So I really would have liked to have had her, elaborate maybe a little bit more so we can adjust and, have the providers that are applying come up with something more realistic. However, we have to think about wherever this goes, you have to think of the neighborhoods, because that is going to be an issue if we begin having problems. I would like either Jimmy or staff to let the public know, because I think a lot of people assume that some of the private land in Gilroy is city-owned, and it isn't. So could you tell the public, what do we actually own that is not in use and vacant in Gilroy? Because I've been thinking too, and I can't.
Councilmember Marks, that's a good question. I don't have that answer for you, but I'd be more than happy to provide anyone with a list of vacant properties. And if anybody was to approach the city and say, hey, we think that property would be a good place, we'd sit down and talk to them. But we haven't had anyone reach to that point with us.
Right, and I just think that sometimes when the public says this, they just think that whatever they drive by and see vacant, it's city. And, I mean, do you know, are you thinking of a piece of land? No, we can't engage?
no,
All right,
no.
sorry. Then crazy discussions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Bracco.
Yes, I think we should explore her suggestion. I'm really concerned that Tim Davis isn't here to answer some questions. I have received phone calls over the last year, and I'm sure Ms. Armendariz has too, about the problems at the Morgan Hill one. And there's even a video online of people confronting Tim about his mismanagement and stuff. So I'm really concerned about that. And I would like to go back to the drawing board on this and scale it down and try to find something more feasible. And you know, we got to remember, this bid was $34,000 a space. We could rent them houses for that. And, you know, these issues, so often the community says, you need to fix it. I'm sure you all saw the letter from the pastor of the Lutheran Church.
I thought he was going to offer.
Fix this because they're leaving garbage in front of my parking lot. You know, this is a community issue, and government cannot fix it. Go back. Look how long Los Angeles has been trying to fix it. Billions of dollars every year. They can't fix it. They can't even help it. The only way this stuff gets solved is when government partners with community members, like property owners. Any property owner can lend their parking lot to this. You said you have two businesses. You know?
Okay, no, we can't.
But I'm just saying.
He shouldn't be addressing you like that. He
I'm
knows
sorry.
better.
I'm
Okay.
just saying any.
No, stop.
I'm just
Stop.
saying any
Dion,
business
don't
owner.
speak directly.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just saying any business owner in the city of Gilroy can offer their property up. They can, any resident can allow somebody to park in their backyard or in their driveway and let them live in a motorhome in their yard. And that's the only way this stuff's ever going to get solved. Government just doesn't have the wherewithal to solve all the problems, and we simply don't have the money.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Hilton, and then before I go to Rebecca third time, I would ask Jimmy or Bryce to restate the recommendation for us, because I think the recommendation might be lost, okay, and what staff is recommending. Because staff, yes, it's recommending rejection of this, but that's not the end all. There's a recommendation that we pool, right? You can say that. I think that needs to be said before we just keep continuing. Okay, so Councilmember Hilton?
This will be brief. It's just continuing on about the site. And, you know, Tim Davis did send over 2 safe parkings from Tracy and LA, and looking through them, a lot of times what the city did is they said, hey, here's what we have as inventory. Here's what, it doesn't mean that there's anything being used for it right now, but here is an inventory, and that sounds like that's sort of what we're doing with Measure A funding right now as well. So I think that's one way that I agree with Councilmember Bracco. Don't look to us to solve all of it. We need the community too, but that might be a way at that task force meetings for the city to sit at the table and actually say, yeah, we can't put all the money in, but here's land that we have that we can put in for a pilot for a year. Doesn't have to be permanent, right? Just here's what we have for a year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, So Jimmy or Bryce, can you restate for us what it is you are suggesting, and then we'll go back.
Mayor and Council, so what we're suggesting is for council, it's to reject the proposal that's present before council as part of this competitive RFP process. With that rejection of the proposal, staff is going to work with the task force and other local providers, gather them together to find out what resources we can bring to bear and to find those solutions that we were kind of talking about earlier, and as mentioned in the staff report as well. The entire thought is that the structure and what we're trying to accomplish, the competitive bid process, we recognize now is not the ideal way to approach this particular topic. It's the way we kind of default in our purchasing policy, but because of the way it's structured and what we need to have as far as partnerships to participate in with it, it needs to be a bit more organic and needs to incorporate a lot of partners. And so that's what we're hoping to do, is have the proposal be rejected. We end that discussion. We engage with the local service providers, which would include South County Compassion Center as one of those local providers, to come up with a program that is going to work, that is going to be financially viable, at the same time provide as much service as we can.
So you would be coming back to council with that suggestion. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Armendariz.
Yeah, a couple things. Just to Councilmember Bracco's point, our neighbors to the north in Morgan Hill housed over 160 people last year alone. And municipalities all over the country house people every day. And so it's not beyond us or beyond our scope to do this. And I know that we have property that we should be exploring using for housing, whether it be permanent or safe park or other. And I'd like to see us do that. And I'd like for providers like, if we reject this, then I'd like to see the providers and the stakeholders at the table include, the Compassion Center, Pit Stop Outreach, our police and fire, the Office of Supportive Housing, and the Interfaith Alliance, because they bring a lot to the table in terms of resources, know-how, funding, and experience and compassion. So that's what I'd really love to see.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is anyone from the ad hoc? Yeah, are you going to try to make a motion, Dion? Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Okay.
It's already made. Okay, and that's okay. And are you including that staff come back with alternative proposal?
Use the conversation we had tonight to reach out to Stop Outreach and other ones to start a conversation and do some brainstorming about finding some property.
Okay, so that's the motion made by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember Marks, and this will be a roll call vote, right? Or no?
Can I have a friendly amendment really quick, Mr. Bracco? Would you consider actually naming out the organizations that Councilmember Armendariz said, just so it's a clear direction on who we'd like to see at that table? Would that be okay for you to add that in your motion? I think that'd be helpful to have that clear.
Center, Pit Stop Outreach, PD, Fire Department, the Interfaith Alliance, Office of Supportive Housing, and any of the other ones that Ms. Bernstein mentioned.
Thank you, sir.
Is that a problem? That to me, I'm not the city administrator, but to me that sounds like could be a problem.
It's not necessarily a problem, but when you get a specific list of those that you are inviting, you're also excluding those that maybe you haven't invited, and you're almost, what I feel is a little bit of cherry picking those who solve the problem. So I certainly understand the concept, but as the administrator, I'd prefer just to get direction to fix the problem and coordinate with those who we feel can help. And as I said, if anybody wants to sit down and talk with us, I'll sit down and talk to anyone.
Okay, I'll reject it.
So the motion and second stand as originally proposed. Okay, the county just went through this too, by the way, by choosing only life moves for their thing, and they got in big trouble for that. So, okay, so everybody needs to vote. All right, that passes 7-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is item B, awarding a 1-year work order contract with 2 1-year extension options for homeless encampment cleanup and illegal dumping to U.S. Ecology for a not-to-exceed amount of $100,000 and adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2022 budget. Bryce, you're giving us this report as well.
Yes, Mayor, Council. Again, just as background, this is also one of the approved recommendations of the City Council to provide a mobile garbage service or program. Again, RFP was issued in late July, closed in late August, and then evaluated in September. So on the screen are the evaluation scores. We had 3 proposals that were submitted. The one that scored the best was U.S. Ecology. Some of the comments from the evaluating committee was that they had all in-house staff, administered their own disposal sites, agreed to the terms of the city's standard agreement, had better labor prices considering small markups. They also had more experienced staff and no use of subcontractors. So the U.S. Ecology sent us a list of previous cleanups and costs. And so they sent a list of 51 different cleanups they've done since 2018. Including all of the cleanups together, the average is $14,800 per cleanup. They did have 4 noticeably larger projects that were included in that list. If we take those out, then it's $5,560 per cleanup. If approved for a $100,000 contract, we're looking at between 6 and 18 cleanups possible. And the reason there's such a large variability in the cost is it really depends on the conditions on the ground. How much they're clearing out, what the content of the garbage is, how much is biohazard, how much is not. So really, it can vary quite significantly. And so that's one of the reasons that we want to do a work order contract with them. So per the scope of agreement, scope of work in the agreement, we're proposing to have a site visit with each of the cleanup activities to make sure that we understand what costs and get a specific estimate for that cleanup before we authorize any work. There are also proposed other uses of this, including hotspot checks and basically going to the different areas where we know that trash builds up and have them evaluate the sites, get back to us when they do the cleanup activity and include those as well. One of the other items that Council is being asked is to approve a budget amendment to use the American Rescue Plan Act funds. As Council may recall, when the funds were received, there's a certain amount that was given a little more discretion out of the conceptual funding plan, about $300,000. The decision at the time was that whenever projects that wanted to use ARPA funds came back before Council, they would then be appropriated by Council at that point in time. So that was one of the other actions we're asking Council tonight. What we're looking for as far as operationally with the contractors, use them for a couple of different purposes. Like I said, large complex site cleanups, regular hotspot evaluation and cleanups. We're looking at them as a potential resource for use for the possible MOU with Valley Water for encampments along their waterway, depending on what's agreed to as far as our participation levels. And also using them as specifically as a part of a multiple level approach to addressing garbage in public areas. So again, we're not counting on this contractor to be the only resource we're using. We're also going to continue to support the street teams, look to local service providers to help provide service as well. We may work with the refuse hauler as well once the franchise agreement is finalized, and also looking towards community and service groups to see how they can assist us as well and as a team approach. There are alternatives for Council. You could reject the bids and authorize rebidding. You could also reject the bids and work with the local service providers to try to form a program with local entities. And the other is to accept the bid but award at a different funding level. So this time the recommendation is to award a 1-year agreement with 2 1-year extensions possible for U.S. Ecology for a not to exceed amount of $100,000. Authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement and then adopt a budget amendment to appropriate the ARPA funds for this project. And then before finalizing this presentation, there's a couple of updates we want to provide as well. So we're going to kind of give a brief update on the garbage truck process. Just mentioned that the bid specification has been released. We've circulated to 33 dealers to date. We're continuing to distribute to used truck sellers. We've only received about 3 responses to tell us basically they don't have any used equipment currently in inventory. If we don't receive bids before the end of November, we'll look to revise and expand our procurement approach. And the last update is quality of life officers. Fiscal year 21 year-end estimates are now looking to be presented in November. The quality of life officers agenda item timing is dependent on that because we're looking to propose to Council to use surplus funds from fiscal year 21 to cover the 2-year pilot program. So the update and the action to council for the quality of life officers will follow shortly after the fiscal year 21 year-end projection. But digressing back, again, the recommendation is to award a 1-year agreement to U.S. Ecology with 2 1-year extension options. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Bryce, how is that going to work since most of the big encampments are on Water District property? We can't just go on Water District property if we want, can we?
Correct. No, we'd have to get their permission and do it. And I don't believe that the proposal is to use our contract for that purpose. It'd be if, let's say, the Valley Water District was doing a cleanup and some of that encampment stretched onto city land or public access land that's not in the Valley Water District. We might want to use U.S. Ecology to handle that part of the cleanup process.
Have you had any conversations with the Water District yet about if they would be willing to partner with us on some of this stuff?
So they've sent me the MOU they have for San Jose, and they're basically saying they want to look at those terms. We're reviewing that right now. There's obviously some changes. San Jose is a very different animal than Gilroy is, but at this point it's very preliminary.
Okay, would this include also around town there's RVs and they just have piles of trash all around the RV. Would they be cleaning that stuff up?
Yeah, so one of the task orders we're looking to get an estimate from them right off the bat is to we're going to identify some hot spots where we have problems already and get an estimate from them as far as how much it's going to take to clean those spots routinely and regularly and actually have basically a patrol, if you would, around those hot spots to see and identify that trash buildup, promptly.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
All right, Councilmember Armendariz.
What will be the protocols used to determine or for the cleanup to, the staff doing the cleanup to differentiate between an abandoned camp and an inhabited encampment? And who will determine what is refuse versus what is someone's property?
I believe we have a personal property list from the police department.
A what?
Councilmember Armendariz, the actual concept is that we don't do that. We do go to these locations and we assist those individuals on getting rid of the stuff that's laying everywhere, and they chuck it into the truck or whatever. They give us the hazmat material, and then we go on our way. This is much different than what the Water District does with abatements and things like that. We're just here to clean up and give them a service to do so.
So that will be the direct instruction, is you just clean up what folks ask you to take away.
And a prime example I could give you is Alexander. If you drive by there on, 9th or so, garbage everywhere. I wish we had somebody we could drive up with a truck and say, hey, give us all your crap and throw it in the back and we'll take it to the dump. That's really all we're looking to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Hilton.
So if that's the case, I mean, looking at this under city responsibilities, it says issue a work order, install notice to vacate signs, notifying encampment users of a minimum of 72 hours to start time of cleanup project. Are you not saying, and even including a notice to vacate,
That's their standard language in their contracts, but we're the service. We're the ones that determine the service. So if we ever had a complaint or an issue, you would actually look directly at the city. You wouldn't blame the contractor, but that's just their standard language because that's what they do in other cities.
The concept with the scope of work is to identify kind of the broadest range possible. So we designed it to go all the way from the soft use all the way up to the hardest of complete clear out.
Okay.
That's not to say that we're going to use it that way, but at the same time, we want to kind of make sure that we had options available. For some reason, I can't think of what it would be, but let's say there's some kind of major biohazard issue that is present at camp, and we have to get down there and clean it up. We didn't want to have a contract, have to go back and renegotiate, especially with the lock-in of the rates and the set CPI increase. We didn't want to reopen if we end up changing scope of work on them.
So like at a minimum right now during COVID, we're not in the business of shuffling people from one area to another because we know that doesn't work. But on a maximum, I can think of a time we would use that, and that's when we can offer shelter and services and have a place for people to go. And then that's the point where you can say, we have other places for you to go, but you can't be here That, to me, that's the end goal. That's the end of homelessness, because now we're able to differentiate between those that don't want to follow the laws and those that actually need help and take those services. So, thank you.
Okay, no other comments from council, so I will go to public comment. Do we have any?
No public comment.
Okay, no public comment on this item. So would anyone like to make a motion? Looks like we have one by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember Tovar, and the motion is?
To approve it.
Okay. So to award a one-year work order contract with 2 one-year extension options. Okay. And that passes unanimously. And then I think we need a second motion to adopt a resolution amending the budget to appropriate the $100,000.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So it was made by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember Tovar, but it's not on our screen.
That's a roll call.
Okay, then that's why. Okay.
Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Laura Munoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Blankley?
Yes. All right, that passed unanimously. Okay, next is City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 quick items. One is a correction that went out on the email blast that goes out to the public every Friday. It listed a study session on October 20th. That study session is on October 25th only.
Okay, I'm sorry. Are you texting, Councilmember? I'm sorry to interrupt, but. Okay.
And that includes 2 items, one for discussion of housing and the housing element, and then 2, the refinancing of pension obligations. So again, apologize for that, but October 25th, and we'll do more advertising for that. I did want to give council a bit of an update on a couple of assembly bills that did pass that may have some impacts on us as an organization. And they're AB 339 and AB 361, which is sponsored by Assemblymember Rivas. And we're actually an interesting community because we are one of the few that are back to in-person city council meetings, and I think that was the will of the council, and I think we've been able to make it work. You are able to have non-in-person council meetings if you declare there is a safety risk or you don't have a declared emergency. Well, we obviously don't feel there's a safety risk, and we also don't feel that we need a declared emergency. That being said, you have to be consistent throughout the organization, so our Planning Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, and groups like that will be beginning them back in person as well, just to remain consistent with AB 361 and to have a consistent method of conducting those meetings. So we'll be working with those boards and commissions to let them know, to work out the logistics, but that is the next step for us, is that they do meet in person. Down the road, we certainly will, as soon as technology permits, we'll be looking at other methods that we can have our meetings and input and community interaction as well, but that's the guidelines that we have right now. So thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. City Attorney's report?
No report. I concur in what Jimmy has said about these. The state legislation is somewhat unsatisfying because it doesn't really go far enough and allow the virtual meetings to continue unless you have a state of emergency and you reiterate that state every 30 days. So it's really
Doesn't make
quite
sense.
restrictive in a kind of strange way, actually. But other than that, I have no report. That's just a comment.
Okay, then with that, we are adjourned. All right? All right. Thanks, everybody.